Setting limits can feel tricky. On one end, we want to curb the misbehavior, but then on the other hand, we want to do so in a way that is respectful and cuts back on all the tears. My name is Dr. Jasmine. I am a child psychologist as well as a mom of 2 little girls. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing practical tips on how to cut back on all the tears after we set limits. So let's discuss. Before we dive into the video, I want to share with you that if you're watching this video around the time that it goes live, I will be teaching a live masterclass all on how to help manage intense emotions, both our kids but also our own. So in this class, you'll learn how to stay calm during challenging parenting moments, what to do and say during tantrums and aggressive behaviors, what it takes to raise emotionally intelligent children, how to teach coping skills, and where to get started in all of that. There'll also be plenty of time for Q&A. The class will be on Saturday, October 23rd at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But don't worry, if you can't attend it live, everybody who registers will get unlimited access to the replay. So if you would like to register, the link is themomspsychologist.com/masterclass. The link will also be in the description as well as the comment section. All right, let's get into the video. Okay, so before we dive into the 5 critical ingredients to respectful boundaries and how to really cut back on the tears, I want to start off with a huge caveat, and that is that, of course, we can't prevent all tantrums, nor should we try, because I feel like when we get into this bad habit of trying to prevent tantrums, we end up walking on eggshells around our kids, and they can sense that, right? And they know that. Tantrums are really a developmentally appropriate response to frustration for little kids. So I think it's important just to manage our expectations around these things and continuously remind ourselves, because I know that it is hard in the moment to remember this, but I need you to remember that tantrums are okay. All feelings are okay, just not all behavior. But we have to operate from the principle that all feelings are valid. My feelings are valid, right? Our feelings as the parents are valid, but also our kids' feelings are valid. Okay, now let's dive into the 5 critical components of respectful boundaries, because I think this is really important. We have to make sure that we are approaching our children with respect in order to cut back on tears, right? Because they can sense when we are trying to manipulate them or coerce them or force them into doing something they don't like, and that just adds to the power struggle, right? That just adds to the likelihood that they are going to dig in their heels and refuse to do what we want them to do, right? That doesn't aid cooperation. It actually aids power struggles. So the first critical ingredient to respectful boundaries is an understanding of age-appropriate expectations. Now, this really deserves, this topic deserves a separate video. It could be a whole book on age-appropriate expectations, but I want to just give you a brief overview. We're talking, or more so focusing in this video on toddlers and preschoolers. So toddlers between the ages of 12 months to around right before 3, that's what I would consider a toddler age. They need a lot of our patience and guidance to learn, right? They're just now starting to understand and realize how many different emotions that they experience throughout the day. The world is so brand new. They are overwhelmed constantly with learning new things, which is both exciting, but again, it's also overwhelming. So they need a lot of our patience and guidance on how to cope with their new emotions and learn how to communicate, right? Especially if we're talking about a young toddler, their communication skills are not up to par by any means, right? They're just figuring out how to string words together. So they're gonna need our help in understanding and learning and practicing what to say to get their needs met, right? In healthy ways. So that's why we're gonna see a lot of screaming. We're gonna see a lot of whining, and not to say that we can't curb this behavior. We absolutely can, and I just launched a video on how to cut back on whining. So definitely check out that video after you watch this one. because there are things that we can do and say, but just coming with that understanding that this is challenging, this is going to be something they need our help with, will help along the way. Other thing to remember about toddlers is they're now understanding the idea of cause and effect. So while they can understand, okay, if I throw this ball, it's going to land way over there across the room, they might not yet understand that if I throw this food, the consequence is that somebody's going to have to clean it up. And so they're going to need our help in understanding those things as it relates to cause and effect, as well as consequences of behavior. And they're going to also need our help and guidance with consistently having them help clean up. I think that's a really good logical consequence. It definitely does not need to be done in a punitive way. It should not be done in a punitive way, but like, hey, that's what happens when we throw things. We have to go pick it up, or we have to, if we make a mess, we have to clean it up. So helping them understand that, but being patient with them is really important. Now, when it comes to the preschoolers, so this is ages 3 to 5, they're getting better at expressing themselves. They're getting better at managing their impulses, but they still need help, right? They're still gonna have tantrums from time to time, but a lot of the age appropriate expectations, especially around this age, toddlers too, but really more so when we're talking about preschoolers, is they need more autonomy. They need more independence. They need more control over their life, right? They're just now understanding they're a separate person. They're understanding their wants and needs and their opinions, right? They're starting to ask a bunch of questions because they really want to figure this thing out called the world. And so they need our guidance in giving them more control, whether that's what bowl they eat out of, what shirt they wear, what shoes they put on, all of that, right? What order things go in. The more control we can give them over their life, the better, okay? So really, really important to keep in mind, especially as we talk about discipline, which just means to teach, right? And as we guide them through learning new skills and guide them through behaving in age-appropriate and healthy pro-social ways, we have to also do a lot of give and take with them to cut back on the power struggles. Another really important thing to keep in mind about the preschool age is they want a lot of attention. They need a lot of attention around this time. And if they don't get a lot of good, positive attention by, following the rules and, behaving well, then they'll start to act out more, whether that's at home, at school, on the playground. So it's really important to keep in mind if your child is struggling with a lot of acting out, maybe bossiness and control issues, right? It probably means they, one, need more control, right? They need more healthy control in ways that they can imagine, age appropriate, of course, but also two, they probably need a little bit more connection and attention. So that's where, one-on-one playtime comes in. That's where, involving them in everyday routines like cooking, and allowing them to help you, interacting, singing, dancing, doing the things that they find interesting, sitting down and, working on a puzzle or drawing together. That's when all of these things really, really make a difference when we think about, getting more of their cooperation when it comes to the things that we need them to do. So number one was a mouthful, because it's really important to keep in mind age-appropriate expectations when it comes to discipline. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment down below if you want a little bit more of that information. But the second important ingredient when it comes to setting respectful boundaries is clear communication at eye level. This is so, so, so important, right? It's so important that we slow our words down. We communicate exactly what we want our child to do versus not to do. So that's the difference between saying, no, stop running, to, hey, please use your walking feet, right? And that we slow down and get on their level. Too often we are standing up, we're shouting from the rooms, right? And we forget, and I'm guilty of this too, we forget that they're so small, they're not on our level, right? And so we really want to get into the habit of maintaining eye contact especially when we need them to do something really important that's important to us. We have to get their attention, and we have to come down on their level and speak clearly and slowly. The third important ingredient to respectful boundaries and respectful discipline is giving saying yes as much as possible. I think we can kind of lose sight of the fact of how often we have to turn our child down, right? We have to say no a lot of the times, and you know, for good reason. It makes sense. A lot of the stuff that they ask for is, you know, a little not outlandish, but it's just not possible in that moment. And, you know, kids don't have, you know, sometimes a good understanding of what's possible and what's not impossible, and so they ask, you know, really, let's say, interesting requests. But I think it's really important to constantly remind ourselves, okay, what can I say yes to? Or if I can't say yes right now, can I make a plan to do this later? And how can I convey that to my child that, you know, their request is important to me? What they have to tell me is important. It's just we can't do that right now. And so, you know, saying yes whenever possible, and then if you can't say yes, give a conditional yes, right? Make a plan to do it later, or, you know, help them understand why it's not possible. Slow down and help them understand versus just, you know, throwing out no's all the time. The fourth important ingredient to respectful boundaries is a plan, right? We have to have a plan for if in the event that they don't want to do what we need them to say, we need to have some tools in our toolbox, which is a whole course in and of itself. And that's why I created Positive Discipline Academy, because there's so many different choices and plans available to us just depending on the nuance of the situation. But really planning ahead is going to help. One, it's going to help us stay calm and confident because we already know the plan, right? We're not flustered and trying to figure it out in the moment. And two, it's helpful because then we can clearly communicate the plan to our child so that they then feel like they are equipped, right? They understand, okay, these are my choices and this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the consequence. Which has gotten a bad name, you know, in the world of positive discipline, but it's not always a bad thing, right? And it's a natural, you know, cause and effect of the world, right? We all have consequences, whether we're adults or young kids. So it's about just helping our child understand that, equip them, do so in a respectful way. And a big part of being respectful about this process is to warn them ahead of time. But again, we have to have a plan. We have to kind of know that ahead of time, and then we can clearly convey that to them. The fifth important ingredient to respectful boundaries is a close connection with your child. I can't say this enough, how important connection is throughout this whole process. This is going to be the magical ingredient that we sprinkle throughout the process. So let me kind of dive into a step-by-step on, you know, what to do and say, or, you know, what kind of the general process is when you need to set a limit. So number one, you guessed it, is connection. Before we need our child to do something that we want to do, it's really, really, really important that we take a step back, we slow ourselves down, and we take time for connection. It's just like if we needed our spouse to, you know, do something for us around the house, right? They would have a really hard time wanting to do what, you know, and wanting to help us out if we were constantly just shouting orders at them, right? And not taking time to pour into the relationship and connect with them and, you know, be careful of our words, right? And so that's the same for our kids. We have to first meet them with connection. You know, ask yourself, how can I come closer to my child right now, right? I need them to turn off the screens, or I need them to get ready in the morning, right? How can I come closer to my child so that we can connect, so that this process is easier for all of us? Number two is validate their feelings. You know, whenever they push back, it's really important that we validate, like, I know this is hard, this is disappointing, you don't want to stop doing what you're doing, right? It's really easy to lose sight of the fact that our kids are we're constantly having to transition from one thing to the next, and often the times the things that we need them to do aren't things that they want to do, right? They're all focused in the here and now. Oftentimes we're asking them to stop something fun to do something really boring, and that's not interesting to them. So validate that, right? Validate that disappointment, validate that sadness or that frustration that comes when we have to set a limit, right? And just because we're validating it doesn't mean that we are, you know, excusing them or being permissive or letting them off the hook. It just means that we're meeting them with more empathy. And this, again, is part of the whole thing and the whole process around connection. And then the next thing is to teach whenever you can, whenever possible. Provide teaching moments, right? If they're like, why do I have to do this, or oh, I don't want to do this. Okay, well, this is why it's important, right? Sometimes kids just don't have the understanding or the context to understand why we need them to do what we need them to do, right? I think it's easy as adults, using our adult brain to forget that, they are so young, they're still figuring this whole thing out. And just because it was easy yesterday doesn't always mean it's going to be easy today, and that they need our education, right? Remember, discipline means teaching. So provide teaching moments as possible, or as many times as possible. And then you want to guide their behavior through modeling. So sometimes, especially for the little ones, that looks like, grabbing their hand gently and doing a hand over hand, right? Or maybe for the older kids, it's about modeling it for them and then, encouraging them to have a redo, have a try. Or sometimes it just means gently grabbing their hand and saying, okay, I know this is hard for you. I'm going to help you along this process. But providing modeling moments and guiding their behavior through that can be really, really helpful. And then also regulating our emotions. Of course, this is so important and often the first step really through this whole process, because it's going to be really hard to deal with our child's frustration around our limits if we are also frustrated and amped up. And again, I'm going to be talking a lot about this at length in my upcoming live masterclass, but it's really important to remember the importance of calming ourselves down in these moments. And a lot of the times, what will help us calm down is, again, managing our expectations of our child, right? And taking time to just simply slow down. And then the fifth important thing is to reconnect, right? Lead with connection and end with connection, right? So let's say you've had to set a limit about needing them to turn off their iPad or turn off the TV. You start with connection. You start with teaching them why, it's important that they turn it off now. What's happening around them. Even giving them a heads up, a heads up 5-10 minutes before. Then it's about gently guiding them if they have trouble with it, right? And gently guiding them, hey, would you like to turn it off, or do you need my help? And maybe they tantrum and you're like, okay, I'm going to adjust my expectations. I know that this is really hard for my child, and that's okay. All feelings are okay. I'm gonna just take time to regulate myself. Yes, it's disappointing. We need to turn off the TV, and I understand that. So you're conveying that to them, and that you're also reminding yourself, right, that this is okay. This is okay. It's par for the process, and that the most important thing you can do is connect and also just manage your emotions. And then after maybe they have a hard time turning off the TV, and you've had to, help them along that process, when they're ready, right, and of course reading their cues, you find ways to reconnect and kind of get back to baseline, which is so important after difficult parenting moments. I really hope that this video was helpful. I know that setting limits can be a huge challenge for us parents, and that it's not always simple. It's not always so cut and dry. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't, and that's the art of parenting, right, is that we're figuring it out as we go along. Our kids are figuring things out as they go along, and just operating from the general principle that all emotions are okay, all emotions are valid. It's okay for me as the parent to get frustrated. It's okay for me to feel confused and not know the answers to everything, just like it is equally okay for my child to feel confused and not know the answers to everything and get really frustrated and have a hard moment, right? That those moments are okay, and they're really par for the course. So it's not about controlling their emotions, right, or stopping the tantrums. It's about, just making sure our expectations are in line with their development, taking time to teach as much as we can, offering more yeses than we do nos, and really, slowing ourselves down. Everything is not an emergency. Very few things are emergencies in parenting. So slowing down can actually be what we need to speed up, right? So slowing our words down, slowing ourselves down, getting down on their level and connecting is often what's going to be helpful in speeding things up, right? And getting more cooperation. And again, please don't forget, give your child as much control as you possibly can, because this will really cut back on the power struggles. And of course, it's okay to set limits. Our child needs our limits, right? They need love and they need limits. So feel confident in that. Know that you've got this, and end with connection. Start with connection, end with connection. All right, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that you'll join me in my upcoming masterclass so we can do a deeper dive and I can answer more of your questions. And of course, I have plenty of other videos on this channel about tantrums and discipline, so be sure to check them out after this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.